Okay, folks, Michael here.
And Melanie.
Okay, so episode 2 of the Reason RX podcast. Hopefully we won't sound like we're in cans. This is all new to us, of course, so we gotta fix all this technical stuff, figure out how to work this, enjoy the ride, enjoy the bumpy ride. So I got a microphone plugged in. Melanie's got a microphone plugged in. We think we got it working right this time. But it's the content that matters. So
yeah, right, exactly.
So we're going to do a little test today, playing with the microphones, trying one, trying another, see how it sounds. But
they can weigh in and tell us which one they like the best.
Yeah. Or some people can leave comment and say they just hate the episode entirely. Just like, I need to dig up the quote. I was thinking about it the other day. Someone said, if you're doing something that matters and people don't hate you, then you're doing it wrong. And they say, if you're not getting hate mail, then you're doing it wrong. Besides which, you're probably boring.
Okay.
Or
that makes it much easier.
There's some other quote, sometimes misattributed to Gandhi, but what people say, something like, first they don't know about you, then they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they build statues to you. Yeah. So, yeah.
Pretty true.
Okay, so in this episode, we'll do a short little episode playing with our microphones. We're going to be talking about logic. It's a fundamental to human life and to education, of course. Because logic is something we got to learn to do. Clearly, you can tell by looking around you. Think about yourself, what you know. Like, just think, what are the rules of definition? What is a definition? What's a concept? What is science? What is a theory? How do you know if you're right? Like, are you in the right profession? Are you in the best profession you have? Are you doing the best exercise you can? Are your friends really friends? Are you picking the best friends? You know, we have all these conceptual conclusions we're using and drawing, and we got to make sure they're correct if we're going to live optimally and enjoy life and be happy and thrive. Mm-hmm. You can look around you and see people who don't think very much and see the effect it has on their lives. Or when people lie, when they're being illogical, how that destroys and wrecks lives. Or you got some bad political system built up on illogic, like communism or Nazism. There's just millions of people that die. You know, in the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, millions of people buried alive. Of course, people talk about the Nazis all the time, how evil they were. Or you got millions of people in China murdered, millions of people in Russia murdered, you know? Mm-hmm. And so,
not for the greater good.
Yeah. So, the greater good of what? That's one thing we got to do. You know, logic says, what is the good, you know? Helps you answer that question and get it right. And, you know, so those are things that come up in logic. So you can tell it's important. You know, like, are you doing the best you can at work? How can you make yourself more efficient? You know, you got to deal with that conceptually, and you're always bringing logic into play. You know, so logic is important. Another way to look at it is it's a method. It's like how we do things mentally, and it's not irrelevant. I gave you some examples right there. Or how like, what is education? How should it be done? You know, just there, you got to use logic to get that right, and then to work with kids well. And then you think about, okay, did I have a good education? I really want to be logical and make sure it's right because it has a material influence on my life. And don't just say, I got a great education because I want to feel like it. No, be honest and be objective. If you did, you did. If you didn't, you didn't. And big what? If you like your teachers, make yourself better because it'll help you. It'll help your friends and family right now. It'll help the culture. You know? Like, logic is part of being honest. How can you be honest without being logical? Melanie, do you know?
I mean, there's a bit of integrity involved there. You have to be honest with yourself, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Got to be honest with yourself, other people. But just like, if you think about the methods, like logic or methods, it's how we do things. Just like in weightlifting, if you don't have good technique, you're going to blow out your knee. Mm-hmm. Technique matters. How we do things matters. Or what makes a great tennis player? Someone who has good technique. Or what makes a great martial artist versus a not so great? It's the technique they've mastered. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right. Absolutely.
It can make a difference between
musical instruments, of course, fall right into that.
Amen. It's like how well you play the piano. So when you're a pathetic nobody like me, you're going to make a bunch of noise. If you have my technique, man, you're a noisemaker. People are going to want to put you in jail or something or run.
They won't buy a ticket, maybe. But I don't know about the jail.
Well, maybe buy a ticket to like put me on a plane to send me far away.
Wow.
But if it's Melanie, then good technique. What?
I could work with you.
I don't know.
Your position there.
You'd become frustrated. I'd drive you into the insane asylum.
You do not know frustration. Let me tell you.
No.
Many students I've wondered,
you don't know frustration.
They turned around. They became
cool.
Good, very good.
Of course. Of course, the magic hands of Melanie. What?
I was just going to agree with you that technique is such a huge part of learning just about anything that requires you be a part of it. You know what I mean? I mean, Technique is you're in touch with what it is you're expecting yourself to do, and if you can work on that technique, you do need somebody to help you a lot of times, though.
Yeah. And
guide you. So you need someone who's already kind of there, figured it out, knows what this is about. So depending on who we're talking to, is it the person who wants to teach, good technique to someone, or someone who's looking to find out what is technique? So, I mean, there's a different approach, but yeah, I think all of those apply for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, clearly, people have had good epistemology all through history. People have had to work hard to figure out how we know something, what justice is. And there's another one I forgot about, like, how can you be just, how can justice work without being logical? You want to prove guilt or innocence? That's a proof. That's logic. Right?
Absolutely.
And clearly...
What's your justice based on?
Yeah. Right. And so it's important in all these different areas of life. You can't get away from it. Okay, let's see. Let's switch the microphone really quickly. You want to try going into Skype? Go to settings and go to your regular microphone, and we'll see how this sounds for a little bit.
Yeah, let's do that. Built-in mic?
Yeah. Okay. Got it?
I got it. Yeah. Well, I don't know what minute this was, but we'll see.
You want to write down 8:30, 8 minutes, 30 seconds? Yeah. All right. So if you don't have good technique in martial arts, you do something, you're going to lose the fight. What made Bruce Lee great was his technique and his speed, and his technique in attaining his speed and strength. The logic behind what he was doing. That's one thing people don't seem to get. They get caught up in biology or nutrition or health or diet or martial arts. But you got to look behind that. What's behind that and allowing them to do it well is logic. How they're working with concepts. That's the fundamental behind it. And you don't get some of that right, you're going to lose the fight because your thinking was bad that led to that. You're going to blow out your knee, blow out a joint. Would you want to be on the road with someone who has bad technique in driving? Heck no, Technique matters.
Yeah, dangerous.
Or would you want some surgeon who has bad technique to do a brain operation or a heart operation on you? No, you want the best technique possible. It matters, even more in your mind, So logic is important, and kind of that's why it's important and what's involved. It's something we need for our human survival. We can see things. We get a lot of information perceptually and pre-conceptually. You can tell by looking at animals. They can be really advanced, like chimpanzees can hunt in parties. They go after chimpanzees, in case you didn't know, they go after monkeys. Some chimpanzees eat like 1,000 pounds of meat in a year.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. That's what we've learned from some scientists in Africa, studying chimpanzees. Amazing. And, birds fly in flocks, and they got to have this complex processing to fly together. And
right.
And shrikes hunt mice.
They sure do.
We saw one this morning.
Yeah. Right outside the window in the tree.
Yeah, up in Minnesota.
Everyone should look that up and really see a shrike in action.
They're awesome.
Quite stunning. Yeah, it's quite stunning. But you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Quite thought out, quite methodical.
Yeah, they catch stuff and put them on thorns because they have weaker claws than like hawks. And so the shrike puts something on a spike thorn and then eats it from there.
Right.
Just genius.
In the meantime, I guess their talons, I think, are just holding on to, steady themselves. And that little thing that's on the thorn is kind of sort of stuck there.
Yeah.
And noticing that a bunch of other birds came around, it took it off the thorn and just held the thing in its beak.
Yeah.
Protecting it, like showing territorial, I guess you could say, over its owner property. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah, they're smart. They adapt. Right. Okay. So, so as we're saying, logic's important. How you do things matters. All these different animals, you look at them. We got this pre-conceptual knowledge, perceptual knowledge. We can do a lot of stuff. We learn habits. We can automatize some things. And then, for the conceptual aspect, we got to use logic and be logical, to make sure we're getting good habits in the first place, make sure we're forming good conclusions. So logic is very important. Can't do without it as human beings. There's no way around it. So we need to just embrace our nature and learn to be logical.
Can you talk a little bit about that as far as how does that work with our emotions? Because there's kind of that idea out there that logic means you're not really paying attention to your emotions. And if you're emotional, you don't really need logic. You just think, you listen to your heart. You just think of your emotions. Yeah,
that's a good point. Just like we need perception and preconceptual knowledge, emotions are part of our nature. Just like I said in episode 1, like with Spock, if don't recognize that you have emotions, that's being illogical. Logic is supposed to form concepts that identify reality. And if you want to try to not be emotional, you're denying reality. Mm-hmm. And then besides, emotions, if you think about it, if we all think about how they occur through life and how when you're young, you don't even have an emotion for some things. Then when you get older, you do. Mm-hmm. Something just has no effect on you whatsoever when you're young. But then when you're older, you got this passionate response to it, pro-life response, or you hate something. And then you see that you can have one thing you value when you're younger and when you're older, but how you value it changes. Mm-hmm. And we see that animals can have friends also and feel, and that helps us see what emotions are. They're not something only humans have, but it's something that is affected by our conceptual consciousness. But yeah, we got to, and then, part of the thing is you see, based on what we said and a whole lot more, it'd be several shows to talk about, but I think emotions embody, or they're learned valuations, and they're automatic responses we have, so we don't got to take a lot of time to evaluate something because we need to adapt and deal with the world right away. So we've done all these adaptation, or this evaluation, all this thinking, and then they are encapsulated in this automatic immediate emotion. Mm-hmm. So we can feel something and have our creative mind free to figure out what to do and whether we're right. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, like, we'd go crazy, or the human race would have died long ago if we had to think about everything, every emotion,
Yeah, I know.
And then I've read some things, like people say that in some brain injury cases, when people lose their emotions, they can't live effectively or at all, because they have trouble deciding because they don't know. There's no emotion wrapped up in whether they should get a steak or some salmon or some vegetables or what, there's no feeling to it or valuation. It's just like some academic problem with no bearing on life,
Mm-hmm. Just perfunctory. I'm just almost going through the motions.
Yeah. And, and so that's not something we want. Emotions are important, but we got to put them in their proper place. Mm-hmm. It's not a battle between emotion and reason. It's a matter of each one doing what they should. We got to use reason to identify what things are and then act accordingly. That's kind of what it's about. Logic is logic. It's not a vehicle for going from one place to another, or it's not an ice cream cone. But, that's nothing against logic. Emotions do what they do. They don't help you think, but thinking doesn't help you feel. And shouldn't be a negative or attack on either one. That's ridiculous. They just do what they do. We should appreciate what they do and act according to them in their limited way.
Sorting that out can be tough, though.
Yeah.
Understanding why you feel something or even what you feel about something. I think it's good to kind of figure those things out so that you're not debilitated.
Yeah, and that takes time. Yeah.
It does.
Introspection.
Yep, a lot of that takes, but to have this process down so that you can, help someone else figure it out too. Or even just get it yourself. It takes a while.
Yeah.
And reading good philosophy can really help with that. It can sort it out. So.
And knowing what your favorites are.
Yeah.
Doing what's important.
Yeah. Well, and knowing what's important.
Having a hierarchy of values. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, so there are some issues that come up, of course, and knowing what logic is, you got to differentiate it from stuff. Logic is this, not that. But don't let that seem to imply, or don't think that, therefore these other things don't matter. We're rational animals, and we've got to see what are the different aspects of being a rational animal. We have perception. It does what it does. Use it appropriately and wisely. We have pre-conceptual knowledge. It does what it does. Use it wisely. Same thing with emotions and logic and reason and our eyes and our nose. Saying logic is bad or saying emotions is bad is just like saying, well, I like vision. I don't like my nose, so I'm going to cut my nose off. Or I only want to be able to smell, so I'm going to gouge my eyes out. It's ridiculous. Use them both. Appreciate them. Or if you don't have them, adapt. There's some stuff blind people can do is amazing. They adapt and go without canes. They go with canes. Or there's some kids who have learned to make sounds. They can make clicks. I don't know if you've seen this person, Melanie. And he can ride his mountain bike down a mountain using clicks, and he's blind.
It's kind of like the sonar thing.
Yeah. That's just incredible.
Yeah.
People can do a lot of stuff just adapting.
I don't think people realize that's what some of the tapping is on the stick. When they have the playing the game.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of the, they hear it and it bounces off of things. And
I didn't know that. Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Not just to feel if they're going to fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
Or if there's the end of the street curve.
Car coming.
Really, to hear a sound.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And so we got to use this, and we use hands for hands and feet for feet. So same thing. We use emotions for emotion and logic for logic. Just do it. Don't get all worked up. Oh, I hate feet. I only want to use hands. Or I hate hands. I only want to use feet. Use your hands and your feet if you have them. Use your emotions and your logic. But
integral, for sure.
Yeah. Logic is a tool for survival. Remember, it's how we do things.
And part of this too, all the things you're saying, I'm reflecting it back on just experiences with raising the kids. All of these things play into how you approach parenting and raise healthy, well-adjusted, happy kids. Because you help them find that along the way. Because it's just every day you see them learning more and more.
Yeah.
It's just a day-to-day thing. You don't have to know it all and figure it all out ahead of time. It's great. You can make some errors, but kids are great. They'll even let you know.
Yeah.
You're not quite getting it right, but so much of this applies in more than just the technique of music or working out and different sports, but even raising a brood.
Yeah.
Bunch of kids. So.
And logic comes up there. What is parenting? What is childhood? How do you raise a child?
Yeah.
And then when you go through the reasoning and take the time to do that, then you'll feel better about the results and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, it's like you make mistakes, reason self-correcting. That's why we have logic, because we're not omniscient, we're fallible, we can make mistakes. So we got to apply a method and make sure we're right and keep checking all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what logic is about. Let me see, we're at 22 minutes. I'm going to switch my microphone. Could you write that down, please, while I do this? Thanks. So let's see how mine sounds. All right, so I have switched my microphone. We'll do this a little bit.
What minute?
22.
Okay, what did you just put in?
I went from my Yeti to my my usual microphone and my thing, my fancy camera.
Sounds better.
Huh.
Here.
Okay. All right. And so we got to make sure when we're trying to figure out what logic is that we dig into it and that some philosophy, because a lot of what people say out there is based on some bad premises about logic. You got Plato. He thought that reason was divorced from the world, and that science should turn away from the evidence of the senses to be valid.
Mm-hmm.
You had to turn inside, introspect, and it's basically like a crazy man. Would you want anybody to do brain surgery on you if they have no experience with the world and all their ideas have been spent by turning inside their own head? You're like, hell no. I don't want a surgeon like that. I don't want a doctor like that. I don't want anybody, a civil engineer. I want someone who's thoroughly schooled and experienced in the world and cause-effect relationships and all the messy, dirty stuff. Not all pure ideas divorced from the world. So for a Platonist, logic could be more about connecting ideas to ideas detached from reality, but that's not real logic. That's not the purpose of it. Then you have no standard. How do you connect an idea to idea with logic when there's no standard? Aristotle was right. Logic is about connecting your ideas, your concepts and generalizations and propositions to the world. The world is the standard via the evidence of the senses. It's the best we got.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to use logic to make sure our concepts are consistent with that. So that's more what logic is about, connecting our ideas and generalizations and propositions and all the conceptual stuff to the world. Not having it divorced, separate, in contradiction to. And so, to do some of those things, as we said, you need definitions and some knowledge of induction and all these other methods in concept formation and theory formation and knowing what science is. So that's what logic is about. And we're going to discuss it more in the future, but there's just some basics about logic and what it's different from, why it's important, what its basic nature is. You know, so some things we can do to make sure we're logical or to make sure we got examples of propositions and concepts. Try never to learn a concept or word without some examples for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't take it from an authority. Learn to train yourself to know what the evidence is and the hierarchy from evidence of the senses to concept or proposition. Be able to go step by step from the basics, evidence of the senses, to the general idea. Then we're being logical, because that's what it's about. Just like in geometry, when we did proofs, you know, if people like knew more about what logic really is and induction, then they could better motivate the importance of doing proofs and could teach them better. We'd know why it's important to do proofs. It's not just some airy-fairy thing in the class, but like, for example, Abraham Lincoln, when he was struggling in his 40s, he had a wife and kids to support. What am I going to do to survive? I need more money, I think he was thinking. And he was losing in debates to Douglas. He wasn't doing good in politics. He was a smart guy. Wasn't he a smart guy? Wasn't he kind of wise? You know?
Yeah.
And so he used to survey, and so he could have taken up surveying besides being a lawyer as well, make more money, or maybe gone to law school or something, or done some other job. But of all the things he decided to do, the one thing he worked on to make himself better was to study and memorize Euclid's Elements. He went through, and that's a multi-volume thing. It's not just the little we do in high school. This is like a multi-volume thing. He went through and studied and memorized Euclid's Elements, so he had the proofs memorized, and that made him a better reasoner, and he did that on purpose, and that made him a better lawyer, and that made him successful in politics, and that allowed him to become president, and that changed our country. Our culture has been majorly impacted and influenced for the better because Lincoln studied geometry.
Yeah, interesting.
And then Euclid's Elements was also a big influence on Galileo and Newton. People have learned a lot about how to reason from that. You know, there's more to learn because induction, how we form concepts, is more important than the Platonic getting stuff in your head and like playing around with it. Because deduction doesn't connect us to reality. Induction does. Observation does. And that's Prince. Can you hear my kitty? Prince, my kitty on the show. Kitty. Okay, so sorry.
He could be the mascot.
Yeah, but that's what's involved in some things involved in being logical, being able to trace an idea back to reality, knowing examples of it, where it comes from step by step, like a proof in geometry. And those are the things we got to develop more in future episodes. That's just a beginning. You know, we want to think about, like, what friendship is. Friendship, you know, to break that down and bring it back to reality, you got to have examples of friends. And, like, if you say friendship's important, okay, what does important mean? Then you got to be thinking about values. And values for whom? And the fact that we're human beings. And start breaking things down there and see where you got the concept of value in the first place when you were growing up. If we look at how we got ideas through growing up, or how scientists develop things through history, then we're getting some of that logic in there. We're learning logic and the hierarchy. So we just want not just examples, but we want to break things down step by step, how we got a proposition or idea. Right?
For full understanding.
Yeah. All right. So we'll just stop there on the little bit of logic for right now. Of course, there's like a heck of a lot more to unpack and develop in the future, but hopefully that'll let people know more about what logic is instead of this symbolic logic nonsense or this deduction nonsense. The most important things are classification, definition, forming generalizations, forming concepts. That's much more important to human survival and thriving than memorizing all these like deductive forms and things like that. So, all right. You have anything else to add, Melanie?
No, but I'm interested in putting it into relevant forms. So like this is great. This is a good start. So I can't wait until we start talking about how all of this, like you were just starting to talk about friendship.
Yeah.
I think that's where it'll start to become real for some people.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice.
Just like you got to learn induction by doing induction. You can't learn it deductively. You got to learn logic by going through the process and going through it with other people and thinking through it in your head, not just reading it or deducing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's an important, hopefully a good start about why logic's important and what it is, kind of some things it consists of.
I think
So, all right. Any hate mail you can direct to me. All the other mail you can direct to Melanie. Comments and questions from our 0 listeners are welcome.
That sounds great.
All right. So, be logical, everybody.
Don't forget to check your premises.
Yes. That doesn't mean check them at the door. That means like verify them and stuff. Yeah.
Even that we'll talk about.
And be a good, rational animal. All right. Reason Part RX podcast out.